click on the hour if you want to start recording then. And we'll be good to
go. We just started.
We're filling up. Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining early. We are about to go live with the Spellmonger Ask Me Anything event of 2024. I have to remember what year we're in there. That's not a good sign. You can tell it's much later over here than it is over there for a lot of you in the US. But yeah, we've clicked through onto the hour, and we're already up to nearly 50 odd people who've joined. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful heat wave driven for many people Saturday afternoon, evening, morning. We are definitely an international event. Just like to say a huge welcome to Terry Mancour, who New York Times best-selling author and creator of the Spellmonger series and the reason that we're all here, and also his long-term esteemed editor and author of the Spellmonger and Legacy and Secret series, Emily Burch Harris. So welcome, and I'm going to hand straight over to Terry. Thank you.
Hey, folks. First of all, thank everyone for being here. This is very gratifying, especially with the book still months away from being released. I'm looking forward to answering your questions, and I just very much appreciate everybody who is that interested in the Spellmonger series to be here and show up and talk with me. It's a lot of fun on my part, let me assure you. And I appreciate Emily being here. She was instrumental in getting the edits done for the upcoming book 17, Practical Adept, which will be out in late September of this year. Pre-orders for the audiobook just went live. The pre-orders for the Kindle will go live as soon as I finish uploading it. And I think, according to my beta readers and Emily, this is a good book. So I'm looking forward to talking about it and a lot of other things in the Spellmonger universe. Again, I want to thank Craig and the two Daves and Manji and everybody else on the Garden Society. That's for those of you who don't know, kind of my inner circle of superfans who help me with things like this and personal events and that sort of thing. And also the people at Podium, specifically I believe Kyle, usually interfaces and helps handle things like this. But everybody at Podium, I have not met a poorly configured person from Podium yet. They've always been absolutely outstanding, and I definitely want to call that out. So without further ado, I'll let Emily introduce herself and tell you what some of the things she's got going on right now.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Craig. Hey, everybody. I hope it's not as hot where you are as it is where we are. It's broiling in North Carolina today. But thanks so much for taking time out of your Saturday to join us. We really appreciate it. And I think you're going to love Practical Adept. It's great. It's great. Let's see. I've been working on a couple of other things outside of the Spellmonger universe while also kicking around some Spellmonger Gatina type ideas. I am working on a retelling of the King Arthur legend. And instead of focusing on the negative aspects of the Morrigan, I'm focusing on the more positive aspects, or my telling, they're more positive. So I think that'll be fun. It might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I'm enjoying dipping my toes into mythology. And I spent several days earlier this month, right before Terry bought something crazy, up in West Virginia in the Canaan Valley area, researching and working on the trilogy, my own trilogy, as well as going horseback riding and hanging out with a bunch of writer friends. And if you are into writing and you too want to become a published author, go for it. Now's the time. Right, Terry? I mean,
I agree. I agree. Never has the barrier to entry been so low for your stuff. Honestly, that's how Spellmonger kind of evolved. Is it was my practice novel that I had sitting on a shelf had been rejected a dozen times by the big companies and most of the small companies, honestly. And when Kindle came along, I self-published and then immediately started kind of rethinking everything that I did with that first novel. So there are dangers implicit to it, but if you have any kind of talent and you have the opportunity to put it forth for people to see, and you're willing to take the hit to your ego that will inevitably happen. I encourage you to stretch your wings. You don't need to do a spellmonger, but you can manifest your own ideas and own imaginations easier and monetize it easier, I think,
right.
than any other previous time in history. Good God, if I had to do all this stuff on a manual typewriter,
Just break your fingers.
Right. There's a reason I can write decalogies, whereas Tolkien could only manage a trilogy. And the manual type, I think, is a big part of that. Um, but and before we jump into the questions, I got just two little things that I want to point out, want to bring up to people's attention. As many of you know, I am a kind of a silent partner in a gallery in Hillsborough, North Carolina. Lance of Boone from the novels is based on my business partner there, and it's not just a gallery; it's a frame shop specializing in pop culture. And one of the cool things about having a best friend who is a freaking framer and a sci-fi geek and just an all-around nice guy is he will send you presents that you didn't know you wanted until you saw them, and this is one of them. This is not just the cover, but the entire book of the Necronomicon by H.R. Geiger. This is the guy who did a lot of the designs, I believe, for the Alien movie, and it's autographed too. And Lance put the whole thing in this absolutely gorgeous frame. The only big question is at this point, where am I going to find the wall space to hang it?
In your bedroom, duh.
Well, not the sort of thing I want in my bedroom. The whole satanic element. I tend to go for more romantic motifs there, to be honest. But wanted to geek out over that, and it's autographed. It's the German edition. I don't know where he got it, but Lance finds like obscure who has a signed picture of William Shatner. The Esperanto movie that he did, which was the only movie ever shot Esperanto, which the fact that he can pull out that sort of thing is just amazing. And this is the second thing I want to kind of announce. I was telling the group before the show that I take a victory lap after every novel, buy myself a little present, and this one is particularly noteworthy and will, I think, be helpful in promoting Spellmonger in the future. And that is, I succumbed to the middle-aged man's folly, and I got. There we go. Hopefully you can see it. There you go. I bought myself a 1976 GMC motorhome. The same basic model that they used as the basis for the EM50 urban assault vehicle and stripes. And it's been used in other places. It's a classic piece of motoring, I guess you could say. It was built by GM. I believe my grandfather worked on the plant that built the engines at the time, right before he retired. So there's a lot of personal family history with this. The cool thing about it is I will be able to use it to drive, at least regionally and probably nationally, to go out and do little mini book signings and pop-ups and that sort of thing. I have dubbed it the Beast. Anybody who's gotten through Foot Wizard knows what that's a reference to. And I'm terribly excited about it. So I think that I wanted to announce that. Hopefully, it will be coming to a city and perhaps tiki bar near you. Um, uh, I'm looking forward to getting out and meeting my fans, signing books, and talking to you one-on-one about everything that's happened in the Spellmonger universe. And without further ado, I'll toss it back to Dave, and let's go ahead and figure out some questions.
Yeah, thank you. So just so everyone knows, we've these events don't come about with just magic and there's been a lot of work that's gone in the background to collect questions over the last few weeks from everybody. So we really appreciate the questions coming through in the chat. There are a few. Keep them coming. If they are exciting enough, as deemed by the Garden Society members, then they will make it through into this discussion. But we do have about 40 to 50 questions that we're going to work through as well from fans. So keep them coming. Like I said, if they are exciting enough, we will squeeze them in there. And I'm sure Terry will take us on many tangents. So we're all looking forward to that. But question one, this question is for Terry and for Emily. So this question is for both. Terry's an extraordinary productive author. Having him break down his habits in the past, we'd like to know if Emily found any of the habits to help, or found any habits to help match that pace, or if there has been any mentoring between the two on this topic. That's our first question. Bit of a technical one on the process.
You want to tell it from your perspective first, Emily?
Sure. So one thing that Terry and I did when we started this journey with the Katina books, with the Legacy and Secrets trilogy, is we took a family trip to the beach with my son and myself and Terry's wife is my best friend. We met when we were 12 years old, and we just went with our kids and went to the beach and took over her mom's condo, which I'm sure her mom is still not recovered from. But no. But we planned out a lot of things and we got a lot of ideas. I would even say for Shadowblade, from things we watched our boys do at the beach. Some of the fishing and the it didn't all make it in the book, obviously, but it helped kind of brainstorm and open up the creative thought process. I work prior to this past calendar year, 23, 24, I was working in academics, so I had a lot more freedom in my day and my night and my weekends and my holidays. And so I could do that. I could go to the beach for a few weeks and putz around and learn about how things operate and how boats work and how ships work and, you know, how that would work. Sailing versus a boat with an engine, for example, like raising sails versus, you know, putting a motorboard in there. And so kayaking, paddles, oars, that sort of thing. But other things we talked about was the whole writer process and the craft of writing. And you can talk about it all you want, but if you're not doing it, then you're not a writer. I want to be a writer and I am a writer are two different concepts. And everybody wants to be something. Like, I want to be queen of the world, maybe for 5 minutes, but then I don't want the responsibility that might come with that. Off with their heads is not really my jam. We're like, let's torture them and see what happens, but only in book form. So.
I have to agree with Emily. We talked a lot about as every writer's situation is different as they approach the actual craft of writing. Your schedules and how you write are going to be different. And Emily and I have slightly different ways of going about it, just because I'm able to devote large blocks of time to this because it's the only gig I got. Whereas Emily has to break her composition time down and actually be a lot more meticulous in how she writes it. But it's the same creative process regardless of how the sausage gets ground. You have to start with um, uh, a rich creative pool to draw from, and then kind of comb it down into some recognizable themes, character arcs, plot arcs, that sort of thing, and then plot it out ahead of time. So by the time you actually get to the composition phase, you know more or less what you're going to write without being locked into such a meticulous sort of thing that your characters can't get the freedom that they need to express themselves through you, which is difficult to discuss in short form. At some point, I would love to do a how to be a writer or how to bring an idea from an idea to a completed novel. But that would take probably 6 hours or more of intensive lecture about it. I think one of the big things that Emily brought away from the experience of co-writing with me was seeing how I did it, but also understanding that there's a lot of flexibility in how I did it, and the things that she needed to take away from me and copy directly, and the things that she needed to kind of extemporize on her own. Figuring out which was which, I think that was part of it. But when you're dealing with any sort of creative process, it's inherently messy, and I think that figuring out your own way through that mess is the touchstone for whether or not you can be a writer rather than you want to be a writer. And it really has nothing to do with publishing, as we were discussing in the pre-show. The barrier has come down to the point where you can get your stuff out there. It's whether or not you can put together a entertaining enough product to attract an audience. That becomes the issue. And so a lot of the sweat that used to go into publishing fiction is gone. And now you pretty much have to focus on your quality and your ability to attract an audience. And a lot of our discussions went in that direction at the beginning of the process. But again, a topic that I could expound endlessly on, and at some point I would really like to do that. But for now, I think we're ready for the next one.
Okay, I'm going to change up a little bit, and I'm going to pull this one off of our Discord server. The order page
Oh, he's going
for
off.
Practical Adept.
This is what happened.
Yep, Practical Adept doesn't have a synopsis. It just you can order it. Do you want to give us a little teaser?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think I've produced the book blurb yet, which means I'm going to be getting an angry email from Victoria any day now.
Probably tomorrow.
No, just to give you a brief overview and synopsis, Practical Adept is the story of men going back to Faris, which we've hinted at and kind of teased for several books now. And he's been reluctant to go back to Faris because that was the site of a lot of his original trauma. And I think one of the major themes of Practical Adept is men confronting the trauma that has affected him for every day of his life since, and trying to put it in perspective. And I for the PTSD and veteran research on this, I really have to thank Craig, who provided a lot of very valuable resources and very helpful insights, and gave me some perspective and some context for men's journey, his personal psychological journey throughout the course of this novel. Psychological trauma is not one of those things that you can fix with magic, really. It's far too complex and it gets into issues of your personal identity. If you forget your trauma, how much of yourself are you forgetting as well? That sort of thing. And so there are a lot of unsaid questions that get posed throughout the course of this book, and looking how men responds to it and responds to being in the very triggering position of being back where he killed his first man, saw his first close friend die, be subjected to the absolute madness of war. These are things I haven't experienced directly, and I've been very reliant on the insights of other people. And again, Craig pointed me into some fantastic directions for how our current veterans are dealing with the issues that they collected during their service. And I'm very proud, actually. I think of how I dealt with it. We'll see whether or not it was, entertaining enough as the reviews roll in. But that's not the only thing that this book is about. That's just kind of the backdrop, the context where the actual plot goes forward. And the plot is men has been tasked to get the pirates out of Greece and ostensibly use that as a reason to conquer it. And that's something he really doesn't want to do. So we got a lot of different things going on, a lot of legacies from his service come back to haunt him in various ways. And in other ways, it's an opportunity for Midland to kind of reinvent himself after the burden and struggle of being the spellmonger for so long. He takes on a secret identity, and he kind of gets a thrill out of that and tries to use it to help deal with a lot of his other things. We see a couple of characters from all the way back, people who were just mentioned all the way back in Spellmonger who suddenly come to the fore. And for those who have asked, yes, we will meet at least one of Midland's children that he didn't know about on this in this novel, and that becomes a very important plot point. So I don't want to give away too much. This isn't your traditional kill the evil Dark Lord fantasy novel. For those familiar with the Sanctuary series, the Shared Universe Sanctuary series, it's a lot more like Sanctuary. Basically, there are no good people here. There's a catchphrase that echoes throughout the book that things aren't what they seem in Faris ever, and that holds true. So it's also set in a subtropical locale. So this is a departure from the usual Northwoods, Northern European sort of fantasy framework that a lot of people have gotten used to. So don't expect a lot of armor in this one. And it's also a departure from, in the sense that it deals almost entirely with human affairs and does not deal with the Gravani, just very briefly with the Alcalan, although there are some important developments on that front. And it's a lead up to men dealing with the bundle. This is an area where I had to lay some groundwork before men is in a position to really deal with the bundle. And I think and there are other forces that Min becomes aware of in the course of this book that are going to impact how he goes forward in the future. There's the argument to be made that it's another boring transition book. I'd like to think it is a little more exciting than just that. Even if you don't see hordes of goblins getting slain or dragons or anything like that, you will learn the mysteries of Porsago. I'll just leave it at that.
Lots of classic magic. Next question. Thanks for that, Terry. That was really great. Next question is for Emily, and this is why I love the live chat feed. So Shadowblade ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. with the anchor, with the anchor reveal and things feeling like they're really just getting started, will the Katina story be continued?
I hope so. Terry and I were talking about that before the live started, and we've been talking about that since about March, I would say. So we have some ideas we're kicking around. We just need more beach time or, GMC time.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm getting on for a road trip.
The honest is that I put Emily and I have put too much work in Katina for her story to end anytime soon. And she will be the subject, either directly or indirectly, of future works. I can guarantee that. She's just too much of a kind of a captivating character.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's a great character to write about and to learn about as you're writing by discovery.
Yeah. So, sometimes she does crap that Emily and I had no idea she was capable of doing until she does it.
She's like a cat.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
No worries. So, Craig, what I'm going to do, because I'll just do one from my list. I'll pull them in, and you can do the same thing as well, but we'll come to you in a second. This one's for Terry. It's on merchandising. Does Terry, hello Terry, have plans to produce an illustrated book? Would like to see map, famous castle, landscape characters on the tavern crawl map of Sevendor, as this could even be a collectible or anniversary copy. We'd like to know if you plan such.
Yes, I do. A couple of them actually, and they are works in progress and ongoing. Which is the good news. I actually have plans to do this sort of. The bad news is that anything that involves art gets incredibly complicated. And I have to apologize for my camera. It's old, it's crappy, and I live on a mountain where the satellite is a little touchy. But the first book that we will do, kind of merchandising wise, it will be the Atlas of the Five Duchies that will contain detailed maps of every place that we visited in Calidor so far, and some places that we haven't yet. But please understand that for every page of that book, you're basically looking at a complicated piece of art that has to be planned, plotted, commissioned, and executed before we can move on. I've recently found a cartographer who will be doing my maps, who does a great job. And we're moving forward to that. I've got several staff artists who do work for me, and as we get closer, I'm going to be keeping them much busier. This is one reason why I'm a partner in a gallery. I get to meet a lot of artists and pick and choose, because I'm picky about that. I don't want it to be an obviously computer generated sort of thing. I want this to be beautiful and dripping with love. And so I need, and it takes a lot of time. Basically, writing a novel is easy in comparison. And writing a novel is not easy. Doing a picture display book like that, it is very difficult. So keep that in mind. It is happening. It's just happening slowly. No release date, no details. Honestly, I'm still working on art and such for the game release. So that's kind of where my focus is right now. But I'm also looking 2 or 3 steps in the future. In addition to the Atlas, I'm thinking about publishing all of the errata from the various novels that may have been included in appendices, or included as basically, it will be a collection of all of the subsidiary works that I don't feel would be strong enough to be published on their own, but I may collect into a kind of a Spellmonger omnibus in the future. And then the third thing that I am definitely planning and working on is the Spellmonger's Cookbook, which will actually be the Spellmonger's Nephew's Cookbook, but that's just too long of a title. And that will deal with some of the dishes that have been encountered, mostly taken from authentic medieval sources, and kind of augmented for the fantasy realm and for modern life. This is a project that is near and dear to my heart. One of my favorite things in the SCA was researching old medieval recipes and deciphering them through time. And there may be more of that sort of thing in the future. Again, I could write 2 novels for every book like that I can put in. So it's really a question of, do you want maps or do you want books? And I'm trying to balance that and please everybody. But there's only so many hours in the day that I can focus on that. But I hope that answers your question, and let's go on to the next one.
Yeah, you need
Yeah,
to
go on,
have,
Craig. Over to you.
the same problem Janet the Jolly has of having multiple helpers.
Yep. You're not wrong.
Dave, go ahead.
Oh, do you want me to do the next
Well,
one?
no, I'll do it. I just, are you handing to me?
No, that's fine. So there is a question that a few of us have been wondering about. So I was pleased it was asked. On symbols we can share, as always, a draw. So our next question is, dear, every divinity of the Narasi pantheon seems to have a holy hand sign. Can you show us what these look like? The fans would like to know.
That's an interesting question. And sometimes I know precisely what it looks like. Other times I leave it a little more vague. And that's, believe it or not, really a reflection of my religious studies education back as an undergraduate. One of the things I was fascinated about when I studied Tibetan Buddhism was the concept of a mudra. And I realized that there's a mudra is basically a hand sign or a gesture or something like that expresses a spiritual or magical belief. It's the same sort of thing that you get with magicians waving their hands in the air and making the sign of the cross, that sort of thing. But there are so many variations on the mudra throughout India, Tibet, China, and the Middle East, that it's kind of a fascinating study in its own right. So I'd love to come up with that, and that may be something that I include in a future expansion of the lore, I guess you could say, of the Spellmonger universe. Would be a specific hand sign broken down by region and belief and that sort of thing. Because they would vary within a society as well. It gets very complicated, but it's a fascinating study. It really is, from a religious studies or a cultural perspective. Yeah, I'll put that on the list right after I finish my exhaustive exploration of wizardly headgear, which is forthcoming. I'm working on the drawings for that as well. So that the hat book will be first, and then we'll go on to the religious gestures. I appreciate the question, and very entertaining. What's next?
Okay. Question from Android in Training. How soon might we see chapters or books from Millennium's POV? And I'll add to that, Penny's kids, any of the main characters.
Right. Excellent question. The quick answer is we might see a couple of short stories before we get to book 20. But I'm really leaving the next generation, exploring the next generation to the third decology. Because I've noticed that when you do a kind of next generation thing, it can be difficult as a writer to be able to do it and keep your old fans happy who like the old characters, draw in new fans with the next generation sort of thing. And I wrote actually for Star Trek: The Next Generation, so this is one of those things that I've actually thought quite a lot about. Um, excuse me. I think using the third decalogy as an exploration of the results of what happened in the first two it is a more satisfying approach to it. And so I'll probably wait until books 21 through 30 to really get into not just Menelin and Penny's kids, but there's a lot of babies out there. She's been busy. And that will actually become a very important plot point in a way that I don't think a lot of people have really appreciated yet. But I'm hinting at it, and I'm hoping some folks will pick up on it. Um, okay, Foxy Lady, I just picked this up. The sign for Ishi, that could be. I'm not saying it's wrong. There could be others. But yeah, you get into a lot. I'll have to drink a lot before I come up with each of those. But I think we're going to be able to. Anyway, excellent question, and let's go on and do the next one.
Okay.
So I've got one for Emily. So Emily, being an editor in a fantasy genre with the Spellmongers universe, how do you balance managing Terry's unique voice and vision while ensuring the story adheres to the genre conventions and high quality standards? Oh, we've lost your sound.
We're not hearing.
Nope.
Oh no, it was working.
You're reconnecting.
We can come back. Let me go.
This is how you know it's a live event, everyone. This is how you know it's live TV.
Now.
Yes.
There we go.
It was
Do you want
connected.
me to re-ask the question?
So, no, I heard you. It was just connected to two spots. So if there's something going on that sounds like with one of the stories and it doesn't sound like it's in line with that character, I usually flag it and message Terry or call Terry. When we're doing a real heavy pitch and we have a good bit of time, I am able to generally talk to him ahead of time, and we'll do like a check-in to make sure that what he's got is where we need to be and what the vision is. We have a pretty open editing to author relationship. I can generally flag something and get a response fairly quickly.
And the other side of that is that there have been occasions when Emily has flagged something quite rightly, but I've had something else in mind that I haven't told her yet. So it doesn't quite make sense from her perspective, but because I know things that she doesn't, it makes sense from my perspective. And so we kind of negotiate that out. And usually I'll reveal what I'm going to be doing, like with the anchor, that's going to be a major plot point in the future. I don't know precisely how, but I've got a reasonably good idea. And so I didn't want to mess around with the anchor until I had a much more concrete idea and had a definite story to go forward with it. But that's one of those things when something pops up that Emily flags, and she's almost always right to do so. I kind of have to. I take a good hard look at it. She's got a pretty good nose for that sort of thing. So do my beta readers, who also don't know everything that's going to be going on, and so may take issue with a couple of the things that I throw out there. But usually there's method to my madness, and if there isn't, that just means I get to go retcon it or fix it, with another story later. So, all right, what's next?
The next question is for you, Terry. In an effort to diffuse the clear danger of Abrahamic gods manifesting in Calador, that's a lot to say for Saturday night, Lelastian became heavily involved in the development of the human divine, the human divinities. Did she memorialize her friends and other notable humans by creating members of the imperial pantheon with them in mind?
Believe it or not, not exactly. And this gets into Lalastian psychology. Lalastian is that batty anthropology instructor you had in school, who I think is almost universal. She is incredibly eager and enthusiastic to study alien cultures. She is fascinated by them. That is the basis for all of her other work, including medicine. And from her perspective, the chance to help humanity script their own religion, basically, when she was called in as a consultant with that. And there will become a point where we explore the details of this a lot more, because she hasn't been entirely forthcoming with men. I'm not saying she lied to him or anything like that, but she hasn't explained the entire situation, for various traditional, very good reasons. But that doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to take her influence well. But she is basically the kind of consultant, the kind of enthusiast, the kind of specialist, who would take a look at humanity's approach to religion and try to make it as absolutely human as possible. And from her outside perspective, that isn't necessarily going to, let's just say she's more enthusiastic about some portions of the human pantheon and human religion and human religious expression than she is others. I think it would be more apt to say that she probably humanized humanity's new religion more so than they would have done on their own, just because she does have that outsider's perspective. She modeled them loosely on the Greco-Roman Hellenistic traditional roots, but then got really, and she wasn't the only one involved. Basically, the pantheon was designed by committee. That's one of the reasons why there are so many problems between the various divinities, because it was a very meticulous process that quickly got overran by organic religious and spiritual beliefs, in the appearance of divinities that were not scripted, and departures from the script by the other divinities. So at this point in her career, Lalastian has been through all of this, seen what happens when you let the most base emotions of humanity run wild. And she's kind of a little more circumspect about it now than she was back earlier. Her experience has taught her. She's less prone to intervene or invoke divinity as she was earlier in her career. But we'll get deeply into Lalastian psychology, and actually the nature of the divinities, including what happened to all the monotheists on Calidor, in the future, I promise you.
Okay,
All
question.
Okay.
What is with Cheryl's obsession with mounting strike days on the equinox, solstice, and other traditional holy days? Is it something to do with his shamanic roots, or is it due to the influence of the Enshadowed and their need for a symbolic attack?
It's actually far more tied up with his shamanic roots. That's true. And simply because it's an easily recognizable day in which to time things. It really doesn't have as much to do with the sacred nature of those days. By the way, everybody, happy solstice. Hope everybody's having a grand start to summer. And as for those hooligans who attacked Stonehenge, what goes around comes around, people.
Okay, just saying, a major tenet of neo-pagan belief. So, real bad move. Not yeah. Okay, but beyond that, yeah. Um, Beyond that, Sherul uses the equinoxes and solstices to time things because it's easier than just counting days. The equinoxes and the solstices happen at precise enough times where you can use them reliably in a pre-industrial society to time things. You don't have to invest in a complicated calendar system that way. And when you're dealing with a bunch of pre-literate Gervani, most of whom are tribal at best, then tying the timing of your attacks and retreats and that sort of thing to something that's completely stable and completely recognizable to everybody is a lot easier than giving them a calendar, teaching them how to read, and saying, yeah, 3 days after next Thursday, we need you to go. So that's the easy answer. But no, the Enshadowed have a much more meticulous sort of approach to that sort of thing. So it's definitely Sherul's shamanic roots. But good question. I like that. All right, Dave, next one.
No problem. Next one. This is to both of you. What's next in terms of spin-off side stories? Now that Katina's early adventures are done? Question mark. Love Shadowblade. This is from Facebook. Will we see her side of the final push against the 5 counts?
We kind of already saw that as much as she was. Well, maybe not the final push. So I get what you're saying there. We never came to that dramatic climactic moment when Engwyn returns and all that. We didn't get that Return of the King sort of feel. I admit, and perhaps I was remiss in that. But that being said. Yeah, I think first of all, we're going to see the next 2 novels will not be series novels after Practical Adept. The next one will be a romantasy, and yes, I feel a little nauseated saying that. But it will be a romantasy called The Talon and the Flame. And it will be a romance novel dealing with Dara, dealing with the question of whether or not she's going to get married, and if so, with whom. And it will be as entertaining as I possibly can make it. And I am enjoying, actually, I'm in the plotting stage at this point, just breaking the novel down. But I am enjoying going through and using typical romance tropes to my own devious purposes. And then the second side novel that I'll be spinning off before book 18 is called The Golden Goblin. And it will be a Rondell Tyndall adventure story. As they go off in search of Lelastian. And I don't want to give away any more details. I hint at a couple of things in Practical Adept about that story, and about Dara's story too, for that matter. But I want to go ahead and clear the histories of Midland's first 3 apprentices before we get into the next phase. And I think that since they all take place more or less concurrently, I think that would be a good approach. Emily and I have discussed doing another Gatina book, but I think we need to get past these next couple of books before we go back and pigeonhole exactly when that book will take place, what the story will be. We've discussed some ideas about Gatina, so and I'll definitely keep you posted as that evolves. But I think it's important that we tell these secondary stories as intriguing as the main series is. A lot of stuff happens off stage that I think you guys should know about, and they deserve their own books.
Sorry, I feel like the bad Arcanist just now. One second, Craig. Did we find out what Katina stole from the ship on behalf of Penny in book 14?
No, we have not. We have not.
Okay, that's good then. I was.
Yeah, I left a lot of intriguing places draped off so that we could return and tell some more Gatina stories. There's no doubt. And every time I consider killing her off, I'm like, oh God, I can't do that. So she'll be around for a while at least. When she does go out, it'll be in a place of glory. I can assure you.
Wow.
But in the meantime, I think we got plenty of more stories to tell.
Her and Nafala back
We
to
do.
back. Okay, question. Are the gods aware of the bleak afterlife that awaits humanity on Calador?
Oof.
Bleak is a relative term, you know. We really haven't established what the afterlife would be on Earth from a thaumaturgical or theurgical perspective. We just have guesses that we reflect in our religion. But that being said, yeah, the gods are aware. They're not particularly happy about it, but they're running up against some natural rules, I guess you could say. And although they are by definition supernatural, they still have to play within the natural universe. And the natural universe says that when you die, at least part of you lingers on. I don't want to get into the precise nature of the soul and the cosmology that I built for this, because it's honestly more entertaining to hint at it and reveal it slowly over time. But that said, yeah, the gods are aware. There's not much they can do about it, even the god of death. And a lot of that is predicated on their inability to affect the essential nature of the universe. All things die. Nothing can be forever. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some shortcuts that can be taken. Humanity didn't really evolve on Calador, and so in a lot of ways, as a species, we're just getting acclimatized to the planet. And I think that there will be a future plot point / discussion between Menelin and the gods about the nature of the afterlife, the other world, and what can be done. You be on the lookout for that. I've been putting a lot of thought into that very thing. So it'll probably be a full-on subject of a future novel. Probably Theurge. If we ever see a Theurge pop up anywhere.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'll leave it at that, and let's go on to the next one.
So this is one of those 1% questions, which only 1% of the audience will be interested in. But you know, we've got to put them in there. People have put the effort to ask them. So, what is a Carcajou? Well, when Ishi gets attacked by the Nemavorti in Varun Palace, the Nemavorti call her a Carcajou, or somewhere along those lines. And is it a slur for human divinity, a descriptor for life magic, or something else entirely? It's only used in Hedgewitch once by Karakush and once by Calibor and.
Yeah, it's basically saying that that she's not. It's an insult, definitely, especially from the Nemavorti perspective. But they're basically taunting her for being over the top as a representation of a human archetype or an archetype in any culture. So it's them attempting to throw some shade on her for being who she is from her perspective, from the enshadowed perspective and the Nemavorti perspective. The human gods seem to be clumsy and without nuance, the way that the Alcalam would appreciate it. And so when they're casting shade on Ishi, they're basically
laughing at the unsophisticated state of humanity's culture from the alcohol perspective. A similar divinity within the alcohol would be a lot more sophisticated, a lot less in your face, and a lot more boring. And I think that's one of the things. The alcohol in general are snobs about that sort of thing. Lelastian and a couple of others being exceptions. Yeah, that's where that came from. But good 1% question. I appreciate it.
Next
Greg.
question. Did the cult of Kalita, as it is in the present day, originate from what happened in Gazika? There are several notable parallels between what Rondel witnessed of Kalita and Alim's recollections of the events in Gazika. A fire-waiting Kalita taking the avatar of one of the maids is an interesting juxtaposition. I find myself fascinated by the idea.
There may be a direct connection. We're talking about two widely separated geographical regions, but we're also talking about the same basic social class and list of complaints that would elicit Kalita manifesting. I think in a lot of ways, Kalita is where the subconscious class resentments for the peasantry end up. And that's going to be true whether you're in Vor or you're in Alshar. Nobody likes working for the man. And Kalita represents a fantastic departure from the abject drudgery that's involved in being a subsistence farmer. And so I think the spirit of Kalita is going to be the same in both places. Whether there's a direct connection or not, I'm thinking there is. I've got a fairly good idea how that might have happened. But in order to tell that story, which I'd like to do, I've been up in the background at this point where, yeah, Kalita is going to be a character. There's no doubt. But in order to do that, I've got to lay some further groundwork, particularly with Alim and Cormier, which will be forthcoming. So that might be one of a story that gets anthologized or included as a short story with a larger work. But intriguing idea, and yeah, that's the kind of thing I was thinking about. Peasant rebellions, regardless of whether they're in medieval Britain or late period China, all follow very similar patterns and courses. And I think that's one of the things I was exploring when I brought Kalita into the Spellmonger universe. Good question. Next.
So the next question I've got from Geordie on one of our online platforms. In the first book, right when Minivan and Tyndall go outside to fight in Mindortal, they encounter a barber who fought alongside them. What happened to this barber?
I think you'll find out in Practical Adept. Believe it or not.
That's very specific.
My camera froze. 2 seconds while I reboot my camera.
No problem. Just while Terry's reorganizing the camera, we're at an hour already. So I just wanted to check in with our guest speakers. Emily, how long are you good for? I would say we're probably
I'm good.
Halfway. Are you good for another hour? Okay.
I think, yeah,
Okay, no problem.
I am here.
Thank you. I do have a question again, just while we're waiting for Terry. Let me just pull it up again. And this is for like anyone in the audience who is an aspiring writer or aspiring editor. Like, what are the most common challenges that you found, like actually doing the work when editing, like especially fantasy manuscripts, and how do you overcome them?
One of the biggest challenges I have found with editing for Terry, and he's my primary client, is spelling and naming conventions. So I have a master list, a Google Doc for all the names, and I'll go back and run it against the current work in progress and compare it to what's already been published. And if it's wrong, I'll just flag it and change it and remind him, hey, make sure you spell Bannermore this way instead of that way. So we're accurate because
I gotta cop to that. I suck at spelling, and usually when I'm thinking about the characters' names in my head, I'm thinking about it as a spoken word. Believe it or not, because I am thinking about how John Lee would say it, and I'm not as focused on the spelling. That being said, I suck at spelling. I really do, I still have simple words that I really have a hard time dealing with. That and I'm not the most organized as I launch myself into a new book, and I tend to focus more on the composition than I do the details. And I get most of the spelling corrections done, but not all of them. And y'all are seeing the ones that I didn't get done. So the problem is a lot worse than you think. Yeah, and Emily will. Yeah, when she read Court Wizard, it was the only time she's ever come back to me and said, "Okay, this is all over the place. You have got to centralize and standardize your spelling for all these new names that are coming out, because they were wandering all over the place. You know, double letters, single letters, sometimes an E, sometimes a Y. You know, it just got crazy after a while, and she was absolutely right.
And I think that's the one where I thought we had new characters, but they were the same characters, but the name was spelled differently
like
3 or 4 times.
Privikin and his 2 brothers.
Right.
Yeah.
That actually is why they're triplets. Is because of my inability to spell. Again, that goes out to any aspiring writer out there. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. When you're cranking and you're really putting out some entertaining prose, yeah, the details matter. I'm not going to argue that they don't, but I am going to argue that they matter a lot less than what you do with them later on in the series. And I've gotten this holds true when I talk to more experienced writers than I am. They run into this frequently, whether it's a plot hole or a spelling error or a character that everyone forgot about or anything like that. If you're doing series fiction, then that just gives you an opportunity to scab on a new storyline, a new character perspective, and go from there. You know, spin-offs are a thing, and I go back to Happy Days, which had 4 spin-offs in its history, which is just amazing for a stupid little show about the 50s. A lot of potential there, and don't let your mistakes drag you down. Just correct them later, because you never know what's going to come out of it.
That's a good point.
And I will take this opportunity just to plug the Spellmonger wiki as well, because every now and again I do get a little comment.
Oh, I use that.
This is missing, that's missing. If you see something missing from the glossary or characters, just add it, and
Yes.
I'll see you added it, because there's a couple of us with admin permissions. We get a notice when you add stuff, and if you if you just add it in, and we'll do the rest as well. So that's a little call out to the fans that are on here, so that's good. But Craig,
right,
next
whoever
question.
built the wiki, thank you, because that has saved me so many hours of time when editing, because we're on
Me too. I refer to it constantly.
Do I, Terry?
I said I refer to it constantly in composition.
Yeah.
I usually have 2 or 3 tabs of it up with various bits of information, because from my perspective, it's either that or chase back through all my novels looking for one particular character that I mentioned in book 3. And honestly, Dave does a much better job at tracking that stuff down and putting it up on the wiki than I do. I have contributed to the wiki. I encourage other people to do so.
For one thing, it can be an excellent introduction if you do have aspirations for being a writer. Writing nonfiction like that, or essentially nonfiction, is a great way to hone your skills and add to the lore, so to speak. So, I encourage everybody to do that and support the wiki however you can.
Okay,
great. Good to
next
know.
question.
Okay.
In Court Wizard, Pentandra mentions feeling Okajan's presence around Briggs Day. She was in court, but was in a position where she couldn't summon Everking without disrupting the proceedings. I'm curious if the resonance of death energy from Okajan Penny felt was in response to Ishi's life energy based magic.
Yes, precisely. Basically, when Ishi made Verone her town, when a divinity assumes responsibility for a particular city or town, it's similar to how Athena is the patron of Athens, and the other Greek gods basically divided up Greece into various. I guess local god enclaves. Um, I think that uh, and don't forget, Ishi had a very special connection to Pentandra. Pentandra was basically a failed avatar of Ishi, who went off and got married and had kids and screwed everything up. And so there was a pre-established connection there. And at that time, of course, she hadn't had kids. But when Akajan came through, it was the radiating of death energy that Pentandra, because of her association with Ishi, was particularly sensitive to. So there.
This is a little bit of a short one. This is from Anna. I want to know what happened to Garkescu. Is he still at Terror Hall and knocking around?
He is not. I can tell you that much, and I can also tell you that we will find out more about Garkescu in the Golden Goblin, and I will leave it at that.
Nice. Just as a couple of quick fire ones, Craig. I'll just
Go for it.
Is the real Azamathet still alive? And if so, is there any chance that Minilad might ever meet it face to face?
Hard question. And it's because technically, yes, still alive, but in this dimension at all, or even reachable at this point, too much is unknown. It may come to that. It may not. I've got a pretty good idea, but I don't want to spoil anything too dramatically. But the important thing is for Minilin, he's still alive in his freaking head every day, and he's grown accustomed to it. He's grown fearful of it. He's grown to respect it, but it's there all the time. And it's clearly one of the things Mendelin is most frightened about, and the experience that probably even with death and everything, and PTSD, sharing the mind with a cosmic elder god, basically, for thousands and thousands of uncounted years. That's the sort of thing that pretty much defines madness. And it's something that Minilin will be contending with at various stages for the rest of his life.
Wow.
I have a short question from the text before we go to our pre-planned one. This one's funny. We need a Rocky-style montage of Gareth getting shredded for the Kasari trials.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably do. See, this is the problem with writing compelling secondary characters, is they take on a life of their own, and soon you have to be careful. That's why I try to space out the secondary books from the spin-off novels and young adult stuff, and the anthologies from the mainstream series, because I don't want to get too bogged down in that, because what happens to Menelin is what is driving everything else forward. But that being said, yeah, you get characters like Gareth and Caswell and uh, Lorcas, Olmeg, Zagor. You know, I've got all these great wizardy characters in the background. And the apprentices, you know, Tyndall and Rondell, who I absolutely love, Dara, and Alora, and Bruderall. I mean, these are all like distinctive personalities in my head. And the cool thing is, y'all are only seeing a little bit of them. They you know, on this side of my brain, they have very complex lives. I've had to think about all the sorts of things that go into putting together a good human being, and figuring out how they affect the little bit of the character that you see. So it's really alluring for me to delve into these secondary characters in depth, but I run the risk of not devoting enough
No,
time to the
after
main
book
series,
30,
and so I've got
you can write into your dotage about all your secondary characters.
Well, yeah, but I want to make sure I keep everybody interested in what's going on in the main plot too along the way.
Well, go to book
I
30
think that
and
kind of
then backfill. Okay,
we'll get there. We'll get there.
next question
Okay.
from online.
Yeah, there's a few shorter ones here, which is good to keep the energy on the call. So when will we see the story of Ron and Tin meeting Rudy? I think that's one you've answered a few times, but
Yeah, and I'll reiterate real quick. My son Hayden and I are writing that. We're just about to break that novel out now. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to do it in conjunction with the Dara book, just so that I can take him through the process of breaking a novel. That's kind of the term of art that we use for establishing what the basic plot and character art is going to be, and kind of separating it out into chapter length, easy to digest slices. In advance. Now, the final book looks usually almost nothing like the outline that you start with, but you have to start from someplace. It's okay if you want to deviate in some ways, but you don't want to do it too much. And so, yeah, I'm going to teach them, and Emily and I went through this 3 times. It's a little. I'm actually a little more conscious of it now, having done that, because I had to deconstruct my own process, in order to be able to teach somebody else. And so, with Hayden and any other co-authors that I bring on board in the future, that is definitely going to be part of their 101 in terms of getting oriented.
so will he have his own room with his own bottle of whiskey and cigarettes and ready to go?
No.
Is that
Room,
He
yes,
doesn't
whiskey,
smoke.
no.
He doesn't smoke, and he's a belligerent drunk. We discovered, actually, believe it or not, Craig in Charlotte last year. He experienced tequila for the first time underage at the after party from the Comic-Con. And he got a little mouthy.
Bleep, 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 bleep.
I know nothing. I know nothing. I heard nothing. I've seen nothing. Foxy Lady had an interesting observation on these side characters. She said every year we need an anthology. You haven't done one in a while.
I haven't. The last one I did was, I believe, Road to Sevendor. No, Road to Vanador.
Road to Vanador.
Road to Vanador, that's the one.
Yeah. And there will be more anthologies coming up. Honestly, and this next one, I may open up to Hayden or Emily for 1 or 2 stories, if we need it. But yeah, I agree. I definitely need to be
Would
doing
be a way
an
to
anthology
handle
at least every.
These characters that don't get main plot time. Gareth getting shredded.
Right.
You know, Katina getting pregnant. How that's going to work. You know.
I completely
Hopefully the
agree.
way a
And
normal pregnancy would work.
Yeah. How she's climbing the outside of a castle pregnant. That's going to be interesting.
That's a good point.
Um, since it
Tales from the
results,
travels of the fox.
yeah. Well, her balance isn't going to be good. Since it results from a divine event, is Janek's thought form theurgic in nature?
technically, yeah. Good question. It's theurgic in nature, but thaumaturgic in expression. Um, and I thought about this a lot, just how especially the sport talents appear in the wake of a snowstone event. And in Jonik's case, it is largely a matter of him being so close to ground zero. He was literally feet away from Alia's crotch while she was giving birth. And when the snowstone event happened, he took it full on, highest intensity. And it brought out whatever latency that he had. But you also had multiple divinities working on the snowstone spell this time. And that complicated the nature of the energy as well. So while it might be theurgic in nature, it's a little more complicated than that because again, you have multiple divinities who are giving out slightly different, I guess, wavelengths of divine energy, and the conjunction of that. It wasn't by design, I will tell you that. And for anybody who enjoys Jonik as a character, I'm pleased to announce that he is a character in Practical Adept, and you will be seeing him at his finest. Uh,
There's some old
so,
favourites returning, isn't there? I mean, you can't tell us anything, but it's going to be exciting.
oh yeah.
So we've got another 1%er here. Where is it gone?
Bring it on.
Okay, so this is cast your mind back to Necromancer. There was a dragon attack in Seven Door, and one of the things
Yes.
that was reported, there was at least 2 Law Brothers were killed in the attack. Character that interestingly went missing at the same time, or we haven't heard from since, is Law Brother Earthine. Has not been around for a good while now. Was he one of the characters that died in the Seven Door attack?
I'm not going to reveal that right now. This will actually come up in the Talon and the Flame, Dara's novel. But as she deals with the trauma of that attack, just to kind of go into some of the psychology of Dara's character arc during her romantasy, is the fact that she's a child soldier and she has seen her home attacked repeatedly. And while she has risen to its defense, there's a price to be paid for that, especially when you're a young woman who was never expected to have to defend her country from birth, the way that her brothers were. So, without getting into it, yes, that matter will be addressed in Dara's book.
Okay, I've got an Emily question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Really? So obviously, you took on the reins of like writing and expanding on and developing Katina's character from the series, from the Legacy and Secret series, from that Shadowblade as well. What was your favorite secondary character to expand on, and why?
Oh. I really loved her cousins. They were fun to
Onelic.
write.
Say,
Onelic and Cousin Hugh. They were just so much fun to write. And I got such a kick out of those. And Shadow Play. And then in Shadow Blade, I liked the friendship between her and her cousin, between Katina and her cousin. I thought that was very important. But I also really liked Geordie and his character. And he's like the kid he's got all this talent, but he's not magically talented.
Hmm.
So he's got to rely on the old-fashioned way, the hard work way, and that's going to pay off for him, I think, because I think we will
Well, and
see him.
yes, I think we will. Yeah, honestly, the cousins of House Fortius are very entertaining. Anelik in particular, and I you know my daughter's actually at Pride today, which is interesting. But I just wanted to mention I absolutely love writing flamboyantly gay characters.
Mm-hmm.
It is something um, uh, it's a challenge not to turn them into a caricature, but there's a lot more nuance there than you get with your typical, gruff warrior barbarian type, and a lot more humor there,
Yes,
and
and sarcasm.
yes, exactly. You can't
Well,
write.
completely.
And which is why it kind of cheeses me off when I get heat for not having openly gay characters, because I do have subtly gay characters, but they're living in a pre-industrial society where procreation was really the first and foremost subject on everybody's mind outside of hunger, and so that's a very difficult situation for anyone to find themselves in, who deviates from the expected norm and standards. And I think
Mhm.
that holds true not just through sexuality, but also just various approaches to life. If you're an artist or a poet in a society that way, if you don't get a patron, you're going to be an amateur for the rest of your life. Same thing with being an actor or some other non-standard, non-traditional. And you look at the lives of Shakespeare and the other artists that we revere so much now and from antiquity, and just to find that their actual lives were really pretty brutal, and that their humor and their sarcasm sprang from a place of suffering in a lot of ways. And I've always found that fascinating, and writing those characters without making them the focus, and them in their journeys, the focus of the overall epic. I think they provide great context and great observation for everything else that's going on. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed writing Anelic. I think Emily did too. We had
It
to
was fun.
that was we had to edit that section
There
horribly
was a lot
at
of
very.
him in the book. Yeah, he was fun to write, and it's weird because I after that came out, I started watching Only Murders in the Building
Mm.
on Netflix, and the two cousins remind me so much of Steve Martin and Martin Short. Just like some of their manner, like how I
Right,
envision
right.
their mannerisms. And I mean, this predates that. So I don't, yeah, it was just fun to write.
Cool. No, that's good. There's a nice segue in there as well to this question, which is from Atlas the Blue, on Discord. Would you ever consider doing a flamboyant kind of question? Would you ever consider doing a short story about Caswallen's time taking care of Min's children, but write it as if their
That'd be
adventures
awesome.
are happening for real?
That would be awesome.
It would, and honestly, that might be my first segue into writing Manalian as a character, as a main character in a story. Um, there's a lot there with Caswallen, and
Mhm.
there's a danger in exploring his character too much, because I don't want to disappoint anybody who is already very much taken with the character. So the challenge is to write Caswallen, only make him more Caswallen. And
Mm.
I think you need the eyes of a child to really do that. So there's a strong possibility. It's interesting. I have been toying with that notion since I came up with that scene, which was really a placeholder scene, because I wanted to have men discuss something serious, but I wanted to put it in a context that people would find relatable, and watching your kids being mismanaged by a babysitter is just one of those things.
So
I had a lot of fun with that.
I'm gonna squeeze in I'm gonna abuse my power and squeeze in a personal question. Bristol Vale got destroyed in Necromancer. The castle got destroyed and lots of people died. Anyway, we've not been back to Bristol Vale, and it was an important part in the early series of the domain. Have you got any plans to go back there in the future?
Yeah, actually, and that might be. I don't know exactly what the vehicle is, but I know what's happening in Bristol Vale. And the short version is it's become like the low rent section of Seven Door as land prices in the city have gone up. So it's kind of become a little bit bohemian, where you get out of work enchanters, the occasional war mage mercenary. It's basically the slums of Seven Door at this point, and even they are getting too expensive now that you really have a lot of influx of coin going through. Seven Door and the other cities that are attached through the magical network are going to experience inflation just because you have so much money moving back and forth that you're going to see prices inflate in a lot of ways that people aren't expecting, including men. And this is something that comes up, but it's a major change and how people do things, and that changes the value of the resources that they have. Um, Bristol will eventually get, I guess you could say, upbuilt into a little more affluent community. But yeah, I think that especially when I do open um, uh, Spellmonger to other writers in a more freeform sort of thing, I could see Bristol being a great place to start a story, just because
Mm.
of kind of the odds and ends from Seven Door proper that have ended up there.
Yeah. No, that sounds really cool. Craig, over to you.
I have three related questions on Snowstorm, so hang on.
Okay.
Okay.
What kind of after effects can we expect to see from a piece of, say, snow touch ghost rock, if any were caught within the snowstone spell in Vanador? Second question. Did Minlin futz the end of the Vanadori snowstone spell because he hasn't yet discovered all the steps needed to perfect his protocol? Or was it Thalassa's unexpected influence that corrupted the effect of the second? And
Ooh.
third question is, what would happen if somebody attempted the snowstone spell in a place that already has snowstone?
All very good questions, and I'll try to tackle them quickly and succinctly. Um, the first one, which was the
Ghost rock.
snowstone. Right. Um, there will be an effect. There is an effect, just as there is an effect on, say, silicon computer components if they're trapped in the snowstone spell.
That never happened.
What that effect is and how what that effect is and how it presents is going to be subtle and something that it will take a thaumaturge of incredible detail to be able to look into and come up with an appropriate answer. But the short answer is, yeah, it has an effect and it's going to be weird. So I'll leave that there. The second question.
Did he futz the end of the second
which
snowstone spell?
Right. He did not fudge it. Exactly. Because there's a temporal element, basically, and just to give some behind the scenes info on this, basically, you have to hit the right window as Calidor is turning, in order to get the full benefit of being facing away from the center of the galaxy where all the Hawking radiation comes from, or a great deal of it comes from. Um, and so it was a matter of timing. By the time Venoman was born, um, you had already, because here's the thing, birth is not an easy, oh, baby just popped out kind of process. It takes time. And so even if the delivery started at the beginning of that window, delivery can take a long time. I'll give you my personal experience that it can go fairly quick or it can go really slow. But by the time that moment of birth happened and you have that natal spark flash, it really depends on where you are in the cycle. And at that point, Minilin was right at the end of the quote snowstone cycle, and it was shifting over into the next phase of I guess magical matter translation. And so that's why you have a smaller diameter, and at the edges things get weird because you're moving from the transition between snowstone and the next magical effect, and that represents itself as changes on the perimeter during from that transition. The interesting thing, there will be some surprises as Vanador grows and they start digging into the overhang, which, if you project a sphere of power from the center of the locus of the spell, that edge, snowstone edge, peters out in the overhang at a certain point, and that transition produces a very interesting effect that we will get into. Probably not until early in the third decology, but there is something there. Um, it's kind of hit or miss when you're doing snowstone. The first time around, men got it just right, and you got more or less a maximized effect. The second time, things didn't work out quite as right, but he actually got it done, which was pretty impressive. And now he's under the gun to do it a third time. The problem is that he's got some doubts about. So far, Alia's been the only mother who's been able to produce this reliably. And so he's got some doubts about the methodology of his theory, but he's still going to go ahead and try to perfect the nature of the spell so that he can do it predictably and sustainably.
Do it at
That's
Tampa
great.
Palace and let them take the whole thing. Let the bundle have the entirety.
Well, he's trying to avoid that, and I think by book 18, when he has a serious sit down with the bundle, that's going to be a point of contention and perhaps a bit of leverage that men can use with them as he's negotiating from keeping humanity from being destroyed out of hand.
The last
So,
question was,
You know,
what if he did the snowstone spell twice in one spot?
it would probably not have it would reinforce the effect, but depending on just how it landed, how close it was to how well within that window it was, there could be some secondary effects depending on what other elements were involved in the area when that spell went off.
Okay.
So weird
I just
again.
wanna- Sorry, you
Go
said
ahead.
again? Oh yeah,
I
I
said
just wanted to. Oh, sorry, Terry. I was just for logistics. We've got we've been going for an hour and a half, so this is
Okay.
really great that we've got everyone so engaged and still such a strong attendance. So we really appreciate it. We're probably going to run for how much longer, Terry?
I can go at least another 15, 20 minutes with no problem. And I'm looking forward to going back and reading the chat. I will try to answer any specific questions as best I can and probably post them on Facebook afterwards. So if you don't get your question in today, and I want to answer it because to be honest, a lot of these questions I see coming up and I'm intrigued. I'm interested. I would love to answer them, but some of them contain some pretty harsh spoilers too. So I want to kind of balance that. But yeah, let's keep going for at least another 15, 20 minutes or so.
No problem. I think I know the answer to this one a little bit, but will Min ever, and some people don't, will Min ever go back to Beauval Vale and take control of the Molopar before the council can get their hands on it?
can't answer that, and I apologize for that. The Malapar at Boval Vale will definitely come back into the story, but I'm going to keep that cloaked for now because it comes back in such a way that anything I say about it is going to be spoilery. I will tell you, we'll learn a little bit more in the Golden Goblin.
Okay, so there are a group of like future plot point like listed ones here. So maybe they're a yes or no. I can answer them. So the next
All right.
one is: Are we ever going to meet any of the three? Was it three of Miniland's bastards issue? I think you answered this at the start. Sorry,
Right.
you said we will meet one of them in three. So that was good. So the next one then is: Will the shade of Umang be a factor in eventually summoning Avatar? Thence in his interactions with Minon.
Yes.
Is that
There you
that's
go.
the answer? Good, we've got a few
Yep.
of these, so we can rattle through them. Did
Speed
Minon?
round.
Sorry, go.
It's a Spellmonger speed round. Let's hit it.
Yeah. So did Miniland stop Ismena from becoming a Morgana type villain? Vengeful family issues by formally including her in his household and raising her as his daughter. Are any of the unknown children destined for villainy in the series?
All children are destined for villainy because they're children. But beyond that, I think that it would be fair to say that Minilin probably kept her from becoming bitter about it. That doesn't mean she doesn't have issues. And that doesn't mean that she's made up her mind about the whole good versus evil thing at this point. Again, none of my characters are obviously good or obviously evil. They're all nuanced human beings or alien beings, as the case may be. Nuanced sentient beings. We'll leave it at that. Who have their own motivations, their own desires, and their own baggage that they're trying to get through. Ismina's got a lot, no doubt. And I think she is a minor character in Practical Adept, and as you experience a little bit more of her, you'll get a better idea of what she's been through and what her perspective is. But she's still a little girl. She's still developing, and just like all of Men's kids, it's not any easier for his children with Alia either. They have tremendous responsibilities and reputations and expectations of them that are going to weigh heavily on them. Just like with any child, you never know what tyrant lies beneath the surface as you're trying to scoop heaping amounts of wisdom and adulthood on them and hoping that they turn out into decent people. But that doesn't always work out. I hate to say it, but there are hooligans and school shooters and all sorts of evil walking around all the time. As a matter of fact, one of the points that Ruderall points out in Practical Adept, without spoiling anything, is that most people are monsters, and they keep that monster at bay throughout the course of their life until they don't, and then things get really awful. And that comes as kind of a shock to Menlin, who hadn't really considered it that way. But Ruderall's in a position to know when he looks at you and your enneagram, and you have your secret romantic life with vegetables or whatever it is in the background that makes you feel shame and guilt and all of that sort of thing. That has an effect on your person.
All good. Will we be seeing other members of the Celestial Mother's entourage, the coachman or the maid or the butler, or maybe new parallels thereof? Or is Alia becoming the new midwife?
That's a complicated question, and it's going to depend on where you land in the story. The brief answer is yes, but not in the way you think. And as far as Alia goes, she is on her own journey. She's been influenced heavily by the Celestial Mother, but then again, she's also been influenced heavily by both Lelastian and Boan, the cow goddess.
She's been kind of chosen by Boan, and we haven't really explored the consequences of that to any great degree. Another possibility for a short story coming up. In general, I think that Alia, the insights that she's gotten from her experiences under the Handmaiden have certainly made her given her more of an affinity for the bundle, but it's not a cut and dried sort of thing. There will be subtleties expressed in that. Okay. Yeah.
We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 of these quick fire future plot point questions left. So, also, how critical is the break? I think this one's from Manji. I think he snuck it in. How critical is the breakdown of the Mangisphere at Darkfaller? And is there anything that can be done about it, or will the castle need to be quarantined?
It'll essentially have to be quarantined while they figure it out. The short answer to the question is that if it can be repaired, it will take divine magic to do it, and that might be a big ask. But then again, it might be an opportunity for Menelin to experiment. We'll just have to. But Darkfowler will be important going forward because of that reason.
Okay.
Next
one. Without giving too much away, who should Min fear more? The Alcoralon Kindred, the Vundel, or the Forsaken?
His wife. But beyond that, I would say he fears the power of the Vundel. He fears the duplicity of the Alka Alan. He doesn't know yet what to fear from the Forsaken, but that's coming, and he has suspicions, especially after what happens in Practical Adept, and some of the revelations that he has there. So it's really not a matter of who he fears most as much as who he needs to fear right now. And ultimately, the thing that he fears is the formless and what they will inevitably do if they're released. Yeah, and so while he is fearful of all of these things, he also tries to keep them in perspective. The Vundel don't want to destroy the planet. The Alkalan don't want to destroy the planet. And he thinks that the Forsaken don't want to explore the planet, which is a pretty safe bet, you think. But then again, he doesn't even know the people who are the Forsaken and what their perspectives might be. And that's going to be a big issue going forward. So when it comes to his fears, that's how I would rank them. And any particular fear of any particular thing is going to be tempered by what kind of immediate danger they're presenting to his world as he knows it, and he will respond accordingly.
Yeah. So that's for Min is reaching levels of power that rival not only the Alon but the gods themselves. Will Min reach a plateau in terms of power?
And he's got power. There's no doubt about it. How do you want to break down that power, though? Does he have magical power? Sure. Does he have some temporal power? Certainly. Divine power? He's just fiddling around with that at this point. I think that as we're seeing the more power, as we go through the books, we're seeing men get invested or claiming more and more power. And every time he does that, things get far more complicated and far more problems. And power is almost never the answer to the problem. It is a tool to be used against the problem. But as Menelin matures as someone who wields power, both the magical and temporal kind, he's discovering its limitations. And I think in book 18, we're going to see that come in a big way. As he deals with the consequences of book 17. So I can't get into it too much, but that's the basic. He won't ever plateau because the more power you got, the more problems you got.
Awesome. Last three. If you can tell us, what did the nun of Limsidens predict for Alia? Did she
Can't
have
tell you.
Oh, nope. Next question. No. Did she have any forewarning of the sudden trajectory of her life would take after Salacious?
Don't forget what the nun in Limson's what her purview was. She was supposed to be able to tell you what you were going to be, what you could be the very best at in your life. And so, no, I'm not going to reveal exactly what they said to Alia, but it was along those lines, and it didn't have a lot of the details. Prophecy slippery that way, and this wasn't exactly prophecy. So we're weaseling a bit, but yeah, I'll stick by that.
No problem. In future books, can we expect to see various non-human citizens of the Mage Law specifically enter the service of the Plough Brothers, Law Fathers, Birth Sisters, and or any of the religious institutions that provide a service to the people?
I think we'll see a little bit of that. But the Alan have a very different concept of religion than humanity does, and it changes based on the Alan. They're more cultic, I guess, more culturally insular. For example, the Tal Alan don't have like universal divinities as much as they have culture heroes that have been elevated in their mind. And most of those only reach back a couple of generations at most, since they're not literate and they don't have the same sort of religious institutions that humans do. To a similar extent, the Alkaline have a very complex mythology, but their divinities never manifested the way that humanity did, and that has to do largely with how their brains work in terms of the liminal and the awake. And it's a different application of the same sorts of principles that humanity uses to project collectively the divine. For the Alan, the Alkalan in particular, it's a much more I guess, personal sort of thing, and you don't get the same effect because you spend a lot of your life wrapped up in your dream life, which I haven't gotten into in any significant depth, but has always been a foundation for the way that the Alkaline work. Is that when they sleep, when they dream, they have as much interaction and are influenced as much by their dream life as they are by their waking life. And this is they don't just dismiss their dreams every morning. They dwell on them. They wallow in them. They're a part. They spend huge amounts of time and mental energy dissecting and deconstructing their dreams. And that's really where the spiritual emphasis of the Alkaline are and why they don't produce divinities like that. So without these institutions, it's going to be difficult for non-humans to transition to believing in the institutions. That doesn't mean that you have to be a hardcore believer in order to be a member of the clergy, especially in something like law. And in that case, there's a fascination amongst all the Alan for a written law that everybody is held to, because that's something that's very foreign to their cultures. But that doesn't mean that you won't have certain individuals who are unique or at least special who want to take that step and learn that part of human society. So I hope that answered that question.
No, that's very good. And you should be aware there's been a whole conversation in the chat about the Tal potato gods and potential Tal gods in the future. So, but moving us on, Palomar Abbey's focus was on studying the stars. Was it its original purpose to create a gamma ray shield in the event that a falling out with the Vundel would cause them to, this is a very specific question, would cause them to rescind the shield they raised for humanity? Oh.
Short answer is no. It was originally established as an
observatory, physical light observatory, in the first stage of a larger astrophysics project that basically wanted to replicate a lot of the observations that humanity made from Earth, only from Calidor. And as you go through Practical Adept, the exact nature of Palomar Abbey is explored in much more detail. And you will see how it was just part of the piece of scientific research that was being done during the colonial period until things went completely to hell. That doesn't mean that there isn't a military component to it, but you'll have to read the book to see what that is.
I was just going to say, is your wife there? I don't think you can say any more than that, so that's good. And yeah, I think we're done with the quick fire questions.
Okay.
So if I wanted to throw it back to Emily and then you, Terry, for any final thoughts and comments, and then I've got a little bit to close us out on promotion of the new book.
I was just going to say thanks, everybody, for jumping in and asking questions and being here on this solstice Saturday. It's great to be part of the party. And keep writing.
I get a couple of weeks off after a book. Okay.
I was talking to them, not you. You're
y'all keep
your wife's
writing.
birthday.
I'm taking a break for 5 minutes between books. For those of you who don't know, I started writing Practical Adept on March 1st. I delivered the completed manuscript on June 1st. It's running just under 300,000 words. That's a big book.
He deserves a break.
Yeah, my wife is saying I deserve
Hey,
a break.
Lauren.
Hey, honey.
And my beta readers will attest to the fact that when I grind, I freaking grind. And I appreciate that. I do.
We are so grateful for you.
Yeah, very much so. I want to applaud everybody in the Garden Society who gave me a hand and gave me detailed responses back on my stuff. I know a lot of people are interested in becoming beta readers, but I would advise anybody who's even considering it to recognize that when I'm on deadline, these are tight deadlines.
It's a privilege, but it's a gig. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is a gig. It is a gig, and
somebody even did it in the middle of his wedding.
Yeah. I particularly have to give American Day props because, and as a matter of fact, I told the rest of the Garden Society as we were throwing chapters out, do not show this to Dave. He's on his honeymoon right now, and the last thing I want to do is be responsible for marital issues this early in his relationship. But just in general, when I'm grinding and I have a deadline and I have a tight deadline, I know how much I need to produce minimum per day in order to move the book forward. And so, and to answer a question, no, 300,000 words is not the largest book yet. The largest book yet was Necromancer at 450,000 words. So this is short from that, but that also provides problems because I'm going to have to split up Necromancer into 2 volumes in order to publish it in print because Kindle just can't handle that many words in one book without me reducing the font size to like 8-point type, and none of us can do that. But in general, I mean, these guys will attest. I'll throw them 10, 20 chapters at a time. And I need it back, and I need it back in a timely manner, and I need it back with as many remarks and perspectives and corrections as I can get. And it's fascinating because everybody who participated in Practical Adept, I got very different responses to some things. I saw all your pet peeves revealed. And
You
getting
didn't have time to edit them. It was like raw thoughts. There you go.
Like Craig. Craig has a thing about hyphens. I get it. I appreciate it. I think there was some comma commentary as well. I had to persuade American Dave that basically fuck the Chicago Manual of Style. I'm a strunken white guy. I will always be a strunken white guy. You will take my strunk and white away from me when you pry out of my cold, comma, dead, comma, hands, period.
No Oxford comma.
Yeah. I'm that guy. I learned old school, and I'm going to keep it that way. And part of that is by design, because when people are reading my stuff, I want them to be reminded of the great epic fiction of yesteryear that was written in that style. The modernization of modern fiction is really fraught with some
Grammatical errors.
not just not just grammatical errors, but and this gets more into the kind of philosophy of writing. But I'm here to entertain people, and I am influenced heavily by the things that I've read that I've cherry picked to steal as concepts to put into this world. But that being said, part of my theft, my good-natured theft, is stealing the style to which I think we've become accustomed. And one thing that I find really jarring about reading contemporary fantasy in particular is that they've ignored that or tried to evolve beyond it in a way. I'm not going to say it's unreadable, but it's less enjoyable to read when I read something like any number of the dystopian stuff from the teenage dystopias from the early 2000s. The writing style is just lackluster and limp, and the concepts are good, but the way that you tell the story matters as much as the story that you're telling. And I think that adhering to those older elements of style is a way to preserve the experience of reading and professionalize it in ways that I think contemporary writers are missing. Just my little soapbox diatribe, but that's one of the things that certainly came out of this experience.
Well,
So
British
also
Dave,
with those commas, hang on, with those commas, it helps for script too. So when
Yeah.
John Lee or Fiona or whoever else we have reading it, it helps it with pacing and storytelling from that perspective.
I also think, though, that younger authors and people dabbling in maybe writing a short story, that group, they're really hampered by apps like Word, because obviously it tries to correct all your grammar, and actually your grammar's correct when you look at the rules, but it wants to add bits and change words, and it really hampers. So it's almost counterproductive writing in one of these, the Microsoft, for example, because
I agree.
it hampers the creativity. It's almost maybe writing a notebook or something might be easier, and then getting an editor like Emily to actually tell you how to fix it all. but anyway, yes. So go.
I was going to say, being
Go
a
ahead,
beta
Greg.
editor, though, you want to give you our best feedback we can. You can accept or reject, whatever.
Agree. Yeah, you guys were stellar. You really were. You gave me exactly what I needed. I can definitely say that. The reactions that you were able to reflect told me that I was hitting the right notes at the right time. The questions that you asked, and shout out to British Dave, because he was doing it essentially in real time, and letting me know how he was feeling as he read it, as opposed to looking back on it from the end of the chapter or whatever. And a lot of the questions that he had eventually did get answered, but that told me I was building up enough suspense in the right places so that when the payoff came, it was emotionally satisfying.
Well, you
Because,
threw me for a right hook, and I told you in my notes.
I know I did it.
I noticed that there would be like a chapter, and then it's like, oh my god, that's brilliant. But But yeah, I mean, just because we've got a lot of people still listening in on this, if you're interested in helping out, the wiki is a really good place to start. I will put a shout out for that.
Right.
So if you're interested in helping Terry in this way and you want to kind of get involved a bit more, jumping in the wiki, there are thousands of things that still need to be added. And if you ever want a little bit of direction, or you feel like, oh, this would be great to help out, or something I like the sound of, jump in Discord, jump in the wiki space, say, hey, where do you need a hand? And I'll point you to 5 places where you can start helping out. So that is a little pitch in there. But thank you.
But you can blame Dave for the way we're replying to you. He sent us an article on how to be a good beta reader.
Sorry.
He says you
No,
don't.
you guys did great.
You don't do the writer any favors by sugarcoating everything.
And that's precisely it. A lot of new writers will become disheartened when their friends or family actually takes the time to read their stuff, and they aren't as impressed with it as the new writer would like. Don't go to your friends and family for your validation as a writer, because you will be woefully disappointed. I think Owen is the only one of my family members who's read extensively. Hayden's catching up quickly. I'll give him that. But Owen's the only one who has actually read and been a legit fan on top of being my son and realizing that his future relies on whether or not this is good.
I'm slow, but I'm part of the creative process.
Yeah. And my wife is certainly part of the creative process, and I get good reflections from each of them. But if you're a new writer, you need someone to come in and rip your stuff apart. And you can tell a novice writer from a little more experienced writer, because the novice writer just wants you to read their stuff, pat you on the head, and tell you what a good boy you've been for writing a book. By the time you get to the second or third book, you're like, okay, quality is really an issue here, and I need some straight up unmitigated perspective on whether or not this sucks, because I don't think it sucks, but then again, I wrote it, or I think this sucks because I wrote it, depending on your approach. But either way, being able to get a neutral, even if it's a fan who thinks everything that you write is golden, I need to hear from that just to be able to make sure that I'm hitting the notes that the fans want me to hit. Especially in a departure like Practical Adept, where men's not fighting goblins, men's not, striving against the kingdom or the court or things like that. Men's dealing with some very different sorts of challenges, and I need to know from hardcore fans whether or not this fulfills the expectation that I've set up in the previous books. At the same time, I just need reflection on the cool value of each chapter that comes along. I follow Stephen Bruce's dictum of putting one cool thing in every chapter, and being able to have a beta reader come back and say, "Oh yeah, I saw that. That was so cool." That lets me know that I've achieved that successfully. So when I started out, there were no beta readers. I've had a couple of dedicated ones along the way. Aaron helped me significantly with Shadow Mage, for example, when it came out. But I think I've gotten sophisticated enough in my approach that I can take that. The hardest thing actually was bebopping back and forth between everybody's responses, and matching it up with the final manuscript. And I know I've still got a few more corrections to go before laying down the print edition. But we're getting there, and I think most of the serious errors were taken care of before it got turned into Podium. So my heartfelt thanks to everybody who participated in that, and let me assure you that the value that I got from it was far more than you think.
Well,
Yeah.
as you said,
Well, it was
this is the first book where there's no goblins.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's a single goblin that appears in this entire book.
No evil goblin
Yeah, but
heads
there's
in
some
every
really
night.
cool other bits, though, isn't there? I mean,
No Cornwall.
yeah, there's some great things for people to look forward to. Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do, because we're at night, I'm sure we can keep talking on through the night. But as far as the recording's gone, thank you for everyone attending our first Spellmonger AMA of 2024. Huge thank you to Emily for taking the time to come and join us and answer our questions. Huge thanks to Terry, as usual, and obviously to Craig and Spell Warden Cantankerous, aka American Dave. And a huge thanks to Podium as well. What they were able to do for this event, and the reason why it's on the solstice, celebrating Ewan's Day in the Divine Tiller's name, is that Practical Adept pre-order is now available. So Spellmonger Book 17 of the Spellmonger series is available. It is looking like it's going to be 32 hours and 57 minutes of pure entertainment, which is a long for an audiobook, considering you can get trilogies that are that long, which is shocked me coming from like the Spellmonger universe and being really spoiled by these really long books, and then buying a trilogy and going, hey, this is 25 hours and I've got 3 books. Is this really right? Anyway, so that's available for pre-order now. And
the Kindle will be the Kindle version will be available for pre-order within the next probably 48 hours or so. I just got to finish filling out all the forms and uploading it. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get that pre-order set up by the end of this weekend. I encourage everybody to pre-order. It really helps. I also because when it gets ordered, all those sales come in at once, which shoots me up the charts. It's self-serving of me to ask you to pre-order, but it's 300,000 words. You're going to find a couple of them you're going to enjoy. So hopefully it will be worth it. The print versions, I know a lot of people have been wondering about those. I am currently working on the print version of Shadow Mage, and getting I've got to finish editing it a little bit, going back and fixing some typos and that sort of thing, and then I'll get it over to my daughter to do the spine and rear cover. Hopefully by the end of July, we'll have that available for sale. And then I'll have to go on and face Necromancer, which is going to be just awful to put into print. But they're coming, I promise. I've even gotten my youngest son Hayden to promise to go back and re-edit and fix some of the glaring typos in the earlier versions, so they won't be so distracting. But that's where we are and what we're doing right now. Very excited about Practical Adept. We have tentative dates for release for puppy dog. For the next couple of books, but I don't want to release them yet because I haven't actually written them. Adorable, absolutely adorable. But that is where the state of the Spellmonger universe sits right now. Still working on the game, and hopefully we can get the art finalized over the course of the next couple of months and finally get that released. I promise I will be going back through the chat and trying to answer each of those questions, and I'll throw that up on Facebook in a day or so as I finish it up. So. I have not finalized my UK plans. I'm still waiting on my passport to get back. The moment that I get it, we will go ahead and make our arrangements, and I will be making announcements of my UK tour if the State Department lets me actually go. So that's all we're waiting on right now. And then y'all saw the bus. I will start making little regional trips around mostly the eastern United States, but probably.
If you're interested in us doing cons next year, send Terry an email.
Yeah. I am collecting all the suggestions for conventions for this year and next year, and looking at them as part of my schedule. But one reason I got the freaking EM50 was so that I wouldn't be dependent on cons for an excuse to visit a particular area and meet my fans. Cons are fun, don't get me wrong, love cons, been going to them for decades now. But that being said, I do feel a little squeamish about getting someone to pay a day ticket for a con just to see the one author that they want to see.
We always hold an AMA at a hotel or a restaurant.
Sure.
so people can know.
And right, and that's great, but I'd like to continue the outreach to the fans and the discussion by being able to, pull up into some place like Memphis or Columbus or wherever there's a good strip club or a tiki bar, and
You got to go to
find a
London's Lane
good
in
spot.
Canada then. But
Well, yeah, I'd love to do a Canadian trip. I know as soon as I get it. As soon as I get it. But yeah, I'm enjoying. I enjoy meeting the fans more than you know. It gives me a lot of creative juice, and it gives me a lot of excitement and anticipation for the books yet to be born yet. And as I was telling everybody before the show, one of the reasons why I invested in this motorhome was because this is my 50th book that I've written. Not necessarily the 50th I've published, but when I went back and looked at all the works I've done for hire that I published under my own name and published under pseudonyms, yeah, it's 50 books. Spellmonger's 27 of that right now. But I'd like to think that that's a pretty decent career at this stage of my life, and darn it, I earned a truck out of it. So
for the West Coast people, WorldCon next year's in Seattle.
This is true. It would be lovely if I could make both Glasgow and Seattle. So, although the last time any of my family went to Seattle, there were Antifa riots.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah, my wife got caught in an Antifa riot in Seattle the last time she went. So she's a little skittish, but we have
I'll
a
go with
EM50
you.
urban
Don't
assault.
worry, I'll go. I'll be your
Oh, she had her little cane.
You can have American special forces, can't you? It's protecting where you're going.
Got you covered.
And I'll just pick up a bunch of Texans. That's all the special forces on the
business.
And yeah, my wife handled her business. She backed up in the corner, took out her collapsible cane, and had it in guard position. And she was like, "You bring it on, motherfuckers! I'll take care of you."
Language.
It's all right. This is after the
Great
video.
kind of
This is not being recorded. Craig, we will
Okay,
talk to
good.
you about 10 minutes ago. So
You want me to stop it now?
Goodness.
Okay, I'm
Oh, yeah,
stopping
yeah.
Yeah,
We've got this whole section out.